Mark Thompson is the senior dealer at Moneycorps. Mark, first of all, thank you for coming in. Now, there's the prospect, 2010, of a new sort of super currency from the petrol-producing countries in the Middle East. How likely a prospect is that?
Well, we've heard this idea a number of times in the past, and my feeling on it, it's not hugely likely. It's something which these countries tend to bring up at times when they're experiencing their own economic difficulties. So I think it's particularly pertinent in the light of recent events that this is an issue which has come to the fore again. That said, I don't really see it as a likely event in 2010. I think it's probably a debate which is going to gather some momentum, but the ability of these countries to try and push something like that through in the short term, I don't think is that high.
Would there be a conflict of interest, do you think, from, say, certainly the Eurozone and possibly even from the Chinese?
Well, I think the Chinese and the Americans have a relationship with their currency. The yuan is tied to the US dollar, and the Chinese in the past, again, have raised the issue of removing that peg. I think that's something that we are going to eventually see, especially if we see a situation where the Chinese economy continues to grow at a much faster pace, whilst the US economy perhaps stagnates or grows at a slow pace, or even worse, goes back into a sort of recession. So somewhere down the line, those conversations will gather a lot of momentum. Whether we see a definitive break in 2010, I think that's less likely.
So given the possibility of a Middle East, the sort of beginnings of a super currency there are, as you say, perhaps for the future, not the immediate few months ahead, what's that mean about the dollar? I mean, is it undervalued? It has a fairly torrid time.
I don't think the dollar is undervalued against the pound particularly. I think it's probably around about fair value at the moment, 160 up to 165. Against the euro, I think the euro is particularly strong at the moment, not just against the dollar, also against sterling as well. However, I think the euro could continue to lose ground against the dollar. Against sterling, however, I feel that the euro could perhaps gain into the new year. Let's not forget that this time last year was when we saw that all-time low of the pound against the euro. We went down to the sort of 102 level. There's a possibility that we could see those kind of levels again, particularly if things don't work out for the UK economy.
But looking at the moment in the Eurozone, as you say, it's very strong, but it's got issues about banks over there still, hasn't it, and a loss of German confidence that we've seen. Is that likely to undermine it in any way?
I think that's probably going to undermine the euro against the dollar. I think the dollar, where the euro is going to lose ground is probably against the dollar. I can see it going back below 140 over the course of the next few weeks, arguably. There are issues there, as you say. There's issues with banks. We know that an Austrian bank was nationalised early this week. There are also some rumours going around about more write-downs from some of the European banks as well. If they sort of gain accreditation, as it were, if we see those rumours substantiated, then that's going to have a bad effect on the euro. And also there's things like the issues with Greece and the debt over there, which has had a detrimental effect of late.
And looking at sterling, you mentioned there, I mean, the Eurozone, after all, our biggest trading partner.
Sure.
What are your colleagues, what are you doing in the market about sterling in your view of this massive budget deficit?
Well, we're just trying to keep our clients in the picture, really. We're just trying to make sure that they're prepared and they've got the right information. We're making them aware of the issues out there, issues such as the debt profile of the UK, worries about the UK's sovereign debt rating, the fact that we've got an election next year. They're all things which could potentially undermine sterling. Also, if we're looking at sterling against the dollar as well, we did see it extremely low earlier in the year, around about the 135 level. We're trying to urge our clients to take a sort of slightly cautious view of where they feel the pound can go in the new year and just remain quite defensive at all times.
Do you have a fear, finally, that the UK could be downgraded, its rating?
It is a fear. I think as long as we have a debt profile like we have at the moment and no real firm plan to try and deal with it or make it more manageable, I think that does remain an issue. It's also an issue for other countries as well. Let's not forget some of the countries within Europe are also facing that issue. But particularly for the UK, with the election on the cards, obviously debt is going to be a political issue, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the first quarter of next year.
Mark, thanks very much indeed.
My pleasure.